Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm talking today about fear, and I'm talking about fear because as I move through my own journey of excuse me, personal ascension, and as I'm moving through this phase, and it's not even a phase actually, it's an entire lifetime of self-mastery and learning how to really overcome parts of myself that are hindering my growth. I've really started to dig into analyzing my fears and analyzing fear in general, and getting a deeper understanding about fear and how it works and why we fear things and all of that stuff. And I came across this really great book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It is by Susan Jeffers. I will leave the book title, or I'll link, if I can find the book online, then I'll link it in the description box below for you guys if you want to pick it up for yourselves. But I've been reading this book and it's really helping me to understand my own fears, where they come from, why I have them, why I perpetuate them, and really how to overcome them. And so I wanted to just share the 3 levels of fear in this video. And I also wanted to share the 5 truths about fear, because that's sort of the foundation of understanding fear. And once you understand this, then you're going to have a lot easier time to overcome that fear. And in later videos, I would definitely like to share some different tools that you can use to overcome fear. So let's hop straight into the levels of fear. And like I said, there are 3 in total. So beginning with level 1, I'm just going to read off like the different kinds of fears that in general most people in the world have. Some of these fears, of course, are kind of natural to have, right? They're sort of programmed into us in a way, through society and through other people. And some of it is, of course, fears that come up as a means of protection and survival for ourselves. But there are many here that I think you're going to identify with that have actually nothing to do with survival. They're actually connected to something else. So when it comes to levels of fear, so level 1 fears are divided into 2 categories. One category is fear of things that can happen. And the other category is fear of things that require us taking action. Okay, so these are usually the 2 different areas that level 1 fears connect to. So things that happen, so anything that can happen, and the fears that are associated generally with that would be like aging, right? Because that happens, becoming disabled, retirement, being alone, children leaving home, natural disasters, loss of financial security, change, dying, war, illness, losing a loved one, accidents, and rape. These are things that can happen that many people carry as a fear just through their everyday life. Then the things that require us to take action and fears related to that would be like going back to school, right? That's usually a big decision. Making decisions, changing a career, making friends, ending or beginning a relationship, going to the doctor, asserting oneself, losing weight, being interviewed, driving, public speaking, making a mistake, and intimacy. So these are things that require our action, right? So these are action-related fears that most of us actually have. Now, when it comes to, so that was like level 1 fears. Level 2 fears involve the ego. So these are fears that specifically come from our ego, not so much related to things that can happen, or not so much related to things that require action. So level 2 fears would be like, for example, rejection, success, failure, being vulnerable, being conned, helplessness, disapproval, loss of image. These are all from your ego. So it is only your ego that worries about rejection. It is only your ego that is worried about actually reaching success or having failure. It is your ego that is obsessed with, being afraid of being vulnerable, right? And think about how many people are afraid of being vulnerable and showing their emotions, especially when it comes to men, right? It's a huge, and that's why we'll say sometimes men are egotistical, because there is so much in their ego that their ego really stops them from doing a lot of really great things or really important things, like being vulnerable, which is really necessary to be able to connect to another human being. You need to be vulnerable, right? Another ego fear would be like the being conned, helplessness, like getting screwed over by someone. That's a very, very common fear I think many of us have, right? The helplessness, disapproval, right? Not being approved or not receiving approval from others around us. That's such an ego-based fear, because it's really truly not rational, right? Because our success does not depend upon other people's approval of us, right? So loss of image, hugely egotistical as well, right? So these level 2 fears have to do with the inner states of mind. So it has to do a lot with how you think, how you perceive the world, the outside world, rather than exterior situations. So these are not necessarily situation related. They reflect your sense of self and your ability to handle this world. So check in with yourself and figure out if you have any of these fears, which I'm sure you can list at least one or two that would be a fear that you're currently experiencing. So any one of these fears can greatly impact many areas of your life. And I mean, when you think about that, it's crazy how it actually influences probably most areas of your life. And I mentioned in a previous video the other day that one of my shadow obsessions is like fear of loss. That's definitely a big one. And that actually is what prompted me to really start digging and searching and figuring out, what my fears really are, what are they connected to, and how they're connected, and what it even means. Because in order for me to overcome any of my fears, I really need to understand it first. And I need to understand how fear functions within us as humans. So this is in essence like psychology, but it's also your emotions, your spirituality, your everything is connected, right, to fears, because we have so many different fears, especially in today's world. So level 3 fears. Level 3 fear is going to be one simple thing, and you might be surprised. It is, I can't handle it. That one was like, for me, it was so authentically real for me, and such an authentic truth for me, because when I really think about anything and any of my fears, what they all connect to is that I'm afraid that I can't handle it. Like I'm afraid that I can't handle loss. And this is why I was so obsessed with being afraid of loss. Or, just not like I can't handle, like if my child gets hurt, like, anything like that. Like there's so many different things where it has to actually, the root is that I can't handle it. And that is the primary underlying reason why I have the fear in the first place, is because I'm concerned that I won't be able to deal with it. So ask yourself if there's anything that connects for you when it comes to that. So at the bottom of every one of your fears is simply the fear that you can't handle whatever life may bring you. So some examples of this, like remember level 1, I mentioned the different fears and the 2 types of fears in level 1. So level 1 fears, for example, translate to I can't handle illness. So like if you're afraid of illness, right? Or if you're afraid of making a mistake, losing a job, getting old, being alone, all these things. It's put I can't handle in front of it, and then you're going to understand that that's why you're afraid of it. So I can't handle illness. I can't handle making a mistake. I can't handle losing my job or getting old. I can't handle being alone. I can't handle making a fool out of myself. I can't handle not getting the job. I can't handle losing him, or I can't handle losing her. I can't handle losing my money. That is when you really get it. And if you can resonate with what I'm saying right now, then you're going to see that that's really truly what your fears are connected to, is you're just worried that you're not going to be able to handle it. You're not going to be able to deal with it. You're not going to be able to manage that situation in the way that it needs to be managed. So it's actually a lack of trust within yourself that is under the I can't handle it. And I mentioned trust actually in the other video that I made, I think yesterday. So how we need to pour back into ourselves, and we need to pour into the trust of ourselves, because the more you nurture that trust within yourself, the more you're going to overcome the I can't handle it scenario that is in your mind and that your ego obsesses over. And then the easier you're going to have, an easier time that you're going to have overcoming those fears. So level 2 fears translate to I can't handle the responsibilities of success. Because do you remember what level 2 fears were? It was rejection, success, failure, being vulnerable, being conned, helplessness, disapproval, loss of image. These were level 2 fears. So level 2 fears translate to I can't handle the responsibility of success. I can't handle failure. I can't handle being rejected. So level 3 is simply I can't handle it. ... Fill in the blank, whatever it is. If you knew you could handle anything that came your way, what would you possibly have to fear? And when I think about that, then I'm going to say nothing. Because now that I have this perspective and I see fear this way, now I know automatically that I can just have a conversation with myself and tell myself, like, I can handle this. Like, it's okay. And then the moment that I embody that feeling that I can handle something is the moment that fear is dissipated. It's the moment that it just sort of leaves my body and leaves my mind. So, because really the answer is nothing, right? What would you possibly fear if you knew that you could handle anything that life threw your way? Nothing. There is absolutely nothing that would stand in your way at all. So all you have to do to diminish your fear is to develop more trust in yourself and in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. So if you can start to work on that and start building that trust within yourself, then and start reaffirming to yourself that I can handle whatever situation comes my way, then you're going to really start to make some strides forward. So I want to provide an example here because this was something that I actually realized as I was dropping off my daughter this morning. So there's a lot of parents, like when we drop our kids off and stuff, hugs, kisses, whatever. And I don't know if you guys have children and what you say to your children when you drop them off, but what I say to my child is have a beautiful day, have fun, and make sure you smile and laugh a lot. Like, it's always some kind of a positive, encouraging kind of message that I will leave her with before she gets out of the car. And there's an example here in this book, and I'm going to read this to you because it struck me as so obvious and so incredibly powerful in terms of understanding this. So if you have children, like I said, pay attention because this is important right now. So I've never heard a mother call out to her child as he or she goes off to school saying, "Take a lot of risks today, darling." She's more likely to convey to her child, "Be careful, darling." And this "be careful" carries with it a double message. The world is really dangerous out there, and you won't be able to handle it. So that is instantly the message that you convey to your child when you're telling them to be careful. And it's crazy, especially at a park, actually. If you'll notice how many parents will say that to their small children or to any size children, when they're up on the monkey bars or climbing or on the swing or wherever, right? And you'll hear parents saying like, "Oh, be careful," right? And what dawned on me is the moment you say be careful to your child is the moment you have planted that's your seed of fear into their subconscious mind. And that is terrible. And I think we do this very, very unconsciously. I am not innocent in this either. I have definitely said, be careful to my child many a times, probably too many times, but generally, actually, I've tried to raise her to be a bit more fearless than usual or than maybe the average. Because certain things that my mom even, I would have noticed when my mom would be babysitting my daughter, certain things that she would do where it was constantly fear-based. "Oh, don't do this," and "Oh my gosh, don't do that." And it was always a "be careful, be careful, be careful," right? So there was a lot of fear that my mom actually planted subconscious seeds of into my daughter, unknowingly, of course, right? But now I understand that my mother did that because she was just planting those seeds. And I did that, and many mothers do that because we're projecting our own fear onto our children, right? We're actually afraid that we're not going to be able to handle it if they get hurt. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what it comes down to. So when you say to your kid, oh, be careful, remind yourself that that's not a loving thing to say, because you don't want to instill fear into the child. The child is full of wonder, is full of openness, is full of like life and fearlessness. They're born so innocent and so fearless when you look at toddlers, right? And then just think about, by the time they're 3 and 4 and 5, they're starting to get more and more cautious and more contracted within themselves, because of all the times they hear, be careful, all the times, like, oh, no, 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 don't do, oh, danger, danger, right? Like all these things that we say to them, like, God, we instill an incredible amount of fear in children. So is it a wonder that our society is where it's at, right? And how many generations of fear have we been planting and recycling these same thoughts into our children? I grew up in exactly the same way. My grandma was one of the worst offenders when it came to the be careful statement, man. She was obsessed with that statement. Everything we did was a be careful. It was constantly like, we always had to be cautious. Everything, and like getting dirty was just, oh man, now you're all dirty. Like everything was always kind of an issue, right? So now that I look back, it's like, man, no wonder I'm so afraid of so many things, and no wonder that I don't trust myself. And I'm not saying this to blame my mother or my grandmother or anything like that. It's just simply an observation that I've made, and an understanding that I now have, and a clarity that I now have about how I have been so conditioned to be fearful and afraid of actually trusting myself, because ultimately that's what we're afraid of, is trusting ourselves. And the kid is climbing on the monkey bars and has a misstep, and the parent goes, oh, be careful. Now the kid is instantly going to become insecure about their next step, right? And now they're either going to start crying and being like, well, fuck this, I don't even want to climb the monkey bars, right? Because they actually become so afraid because of that one little slip. It's all about how you respond and how you react and what you say. And when I would see my daughter slip on the monkey bars before, I actually did a test one time where I just watched her and I observed her, and her one foot slipped slightly, and I didn't say anything. And I just kind of like stood there and I was watching her. And that moment that she slipped and she felt a little like, ooh, it scared her a bit, she looked at me immediately for a reaction to see what I was going to respond to that and what I was going to say. So the very first thing, and all I did actually, just innately, because I felt she was safe. She was okay. She was right there in front of me. And I just smiled at her and just kind of like, you're good. I'm like, keep going. You're good. And I could see how like the fear left her. It just dissipated. And she was just like, okay, we're good. And she kept going and she was great. And the second time she climbed up on the same monkey bar, nothing. She didn't slip that time. She didn't have any insecurity. She didn't have any fear, nothing at all. So this matters. How we respond as mothers to our children and the things that happen to them matters. And it's not to say be reckless and let them do everything and anything. That's extremely dangerous. Of course not. But make sure that you're not inserting those little seeds of fear into their subconscious mind through everything that you're constantly saying, and all the be carefuls, right? In all the different ways that we can tell our children to be careful. So it's a little story I wanted to share, because that lack of trust, that's where it comes from. And if you want to understand where your lack of trust comes from, then kind of look backwards and maybe look at your childhood. Look at how you were conditioned and what you were conditioned with. What are your parents like? What were your guardians or whoever raised you? What were they like? Were they full of fear? Well, then it's not going to be, difficult to figure out that that's where so much of your own fear and your own lack of self-trust comes from. So that's the 3 levels of fear. Now I want to get into, I'm just going to mention 2 more things here. So whatever happens to me, given any situation, I can handle it. And that is a really powerful, positive statement that you can use for yourself on a daily basis, especially if you really, really struggle with fear, or if you really, really struggle with taking action when it comes to certain things because you're not trusting yourself. Then you say, whatever happens to me, given any situation, I can handle it. And add to the end of that, I will handle it. Okay, really powerful statements. Use these guys. Write it down for yourself. Put it on a sticky note. Put it on your mirror. I can handle whatever situation comes my way at any time or in any moment. Okay, it's really powerful. It's very empowering, actually. So now let's talk about the 5 truths about fear, and then I'm going to wrap it up. The 5 truths about fear are: number 1, the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. And with that being said, So the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. With that being said, understand this, that get into this mindset of when I'm no longer, or ask yourself, when I'm no longer afraid, then I will do X, Y, Z. Do you do that? Do you say that? Do you think that? Do you feel that within yourself? When I'm not afraid anymore, then I will make that phone call. When I'm not afraid anymore, then I will apply for that job. When I'm not afraid anymore, I'll ask that girl out on that date. When I'm not afraid anymore, I will start my new business. When I'm not afraid anymore, I will go back to school and get that education that I've always wanted. Do you see how incredibly false that is, and how we will use that basically as an excuse to not take action, to not do or believe whatever it is that we need to in order to move forward? So that is an absolute statement that you need to remind yourself that that's not how you want to live. Okay, because the fear will never go away. Okay, this is the first truth that this connects to, is that the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. And you know why it's not going to go away? Because as long as you're growing, it means you're expanding. It means you're growth means that you're constantly pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And if you're constantly pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, then that means that you're constantly having to overcome your own fear. You're constantly having to push past those boundaries of fear that you have set up or that your mind has set up for you, right? But if you understand that my continuous growth requires continuous busting through comfort zone and busting through glass ceiling, and that's always scary, then, and you just accept that, because you know you're going to keep doing it regardless, right? If you want to grow, you're just going to keep pushing those boundaries. You're going to keep pushing past the glass ceiling and outside of the comfort zone. Yeah, it's going to bring up fear within you every time, but it's also going to, that fear will dissipate once you do it, right? Because you know, and now you've accepted, and now you understand that your continuous growth will always have, little fragments of fear coming up. But that's okay, because the fear is just there is as an illusion. The fear is there as a means of protection in a way when it comes to certain things. But just the acceptance of that will allow you to move past it. So, number one, truth, fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. Accept it, integrate this into your knowing, and you'll have a significantly easier time when it comes to your growth and when it comes to fear. You'll just have less fear around your growth, in other words. So number two, the only way to get rid of the fear of doing something is to go out and do it. And I am going to use myself as an example for this, because I certainly experienced this with my YouTube channel. I had never made recordings before. I've never been on camera before. It wasn't something I ever did. I was a massage therapist for 17 years. I ran a clinic for 10 years of that, and I was managing other people. So it was this realm was not my thing. I was in a completely different structure of business. I was in a completely different line of work. And when I first started this channel, it was really hard. And to be honest with you, I had the initial idea to start this channel back in 2016, which is when I actually created my YouTube channel, was in 2016. I didn't make my first post until 2020. So when the pandemic hit was the first time that I actually finally had the courage to make my first video and to post my first video. So speaking from personal experience, you're going to feel the fear, but it's like, if you don't take the action until you actually do the thing that you're afraid of, you're never going to overcome it. Because as soon as I did my first video, I was like, oh my God, that was awesome. And I had this sense of relief, and I had this sense of joy and this sense of pride within me that wow, I did it finally. And then now I've got 147, I think, something like that, videos. So it's now I've practiced overcoming that fear 147 times, and actually even more than that, because there's countless videos that I've recorded and just never posted. So it's I am that living example that the moment you decide that you're just going to go for it and you're just going to do it is the moment that the fear actually dissipates, because now you've done it. Now you have an experience that you can that you can kind of like hang on to and be like, and even if it doesn't go well, it's okay. Like, even if the first time you do whatever and it doesn't go well, it's all right. It's now a little tiny bit of momentum has started building, and you can build upon that momentum by trying again and trying again and trying again. And eventually you're really going to build up confidence, because you're going to realize that, like, the hardest freaking part was taking the first step. And once you've taken that first step, you're good. Like, you're just going to realize, like, oh, okay, well, that actually wasn't so bad. So that's how we grow. Okay. So first rule, or the first truth of fear, is accept it. Accept that fear is always going to be present, and push past it and allow yourself to just accept that fear is present. Number two is to actually take action on the thing that you fear the most, so that you can build experience and build confidence. The third truth about fear is that the only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. So feeling better about yourself also has everything to do with that action that we just talked about in the second point. Because the second point is about how to get rid of fear. The only way to get rid of fear is to go out and do something that you're afraid of. The only way to feel better about myself, though, is also to go out and do the thing that I'm afraid to do. Because only you can do it, and you know that, right? Like, no one else can do it for you, or they can, but then they're going to have that satisfaction of the feeling of overcoming their fear, not you. Number four, the fourth truth about fear: not only am I going to experience fear whenever I'm in unfamiliar territory, but so is everyone else. So when you understand that you're not alone, and that everyone feels fear when it comes to taking action and comes to doing something that is unfamiliar, that is brand new, that is scary, that is different, something that you haven't experienced before, something that you don't really know what to expect, all of those things. When you do it, in that moment, you have an answer, you have a result, you have a certain feeling, a certain level of understanding about yourself when it comes to making changes. So number five, the fifth truth about fear, is pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness. So think about that for a moment. What would you rather do? Would you rather sit there and not take action and still live in fear, and then feel the consequences of that not taking action? Or would you rather take the action, feel the fear, do it anyway, and have a different result? The choice is ours. It's always ours. And we have to decide for ourselves what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do. But just know that every time that you're not willing to take action, you're not going to grow. You're not going to move forward, because growth always requires overcoming fear, because it can be scary to grow. It can be scary, like I said, to step out of your comfort zone, to do something that you haven't done before. And it was extremely scary. I remember being so worried about what other people were going to say, or what other people were going to think, or how they were going to judge me, when I first started this channel. But over time, that fear started to dissipate. And the more that I practiced making these videos, the more confident I got, the better I started to feel in front of the camera, the better I started to feel about this entire mission, and just knowing that, like, I am meant to do this, and I need to do this, because the doing of it is not only benefiting you guys, the viewers, but also benefiting me, because I get to grow as a result. I get to become a stronger, more confident, more clear person, with who I am. I also get to build trust within myself from the process of doing this. And I also get to grow as a result. I gain experience. I get to make new connections. There's so much value in taking action and doing those things that we're most afraid of. That value is incomprehensible. Actually, it can move your life forward in such a dramatic way that you would have never even expected. Especially if you never had the nerve to go for it, or to take that chance, or to try, right? So I'm going to encourage you And I hope that you understand through these levels of fear that there are levels to your fear and how they're connected, and then the 5 truths about fear. And I hope that you can really integrate this knowing into your everyday life and make use of it, and help you realize that, like, you don't have to be afraid, and or that you can be afraid and still do it though, and still push yourself. And remember, the statement that I said is like, I will do it regardless of feeling the fear, regardless of the anxiety or the stress that I'm feeling inside about it. I will do it because I can, and I am capable. And I know that it serves me better in the long run to do something that I'm afraid of. And think of this for one last example. Anytime that I've ever done anything in my life that was like really super scary, the moment that I did it was the moment that I overcame the fear. Like literally, because as soon as you do it, the elation that you feel, that sense of relief that you feel from doing that thing that you're afraid of is the reward. Actually, sometimes it's not even the outcome, it's the reward, is feeling that relief and giving yourself that sense of feeling and that sense of knowing that, like, wow, I just did that, wow, I just overcame that. That's huge, and that reward is something that money can't buy. And that's always just up to us, just to take the right action and to really be willing to go for it, whether you feel the fear or not. So as my closing statement, I'm going to leave you with this: I will, I can, and I'm 100% capable of doing and dealing with everything and anything that comes my way. I hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope it helped illuminate your perception about your fears. And with that being said, I really hope that it helps you to now be more willing to accept your fears and take the action and do whatever it is that you need to do to move your life forward, regardless of feeling it. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. And I will be back very soon with another video about more ways to overcome fear. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.